and hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 1 in TAB5. Today, we would like to present to you about ethics and public speaking and also listening. So, we are consist of 4 members, including me. My name is BINTI RUSLAN and my metric number is 1182542. My member name is ATHIRAH binti ROSLI, SYAFIQAH binti MUSTAPHA and JAAFAR bin MAHMUD. Okay, so now here we move to the next part, which is I will tell you about definition of ethics and public speaking. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with human affairs issue, either it is right or wrong. The word ethics can become in a different meanings from different person. To be an effective listener or speaker, it is important to begin with ethically intention. For example, when we want to make a judgment from the speaker, we must to give them to finish their word. Also, we should aware with people that engage with unethical behavior. Public speaking is a form of communication in which the speaker addresses relatively large audience with the relatively continuous discourse, especially in the face-to-face situation. Public speaking being a critical tool throughout history for personal and public participation. As a speaker, we must have a credibility and skills on how we want to attract the others to hear our speech, and finally, they can understand what we want to tell them. There are a few guidelines for ethical speaker. Firstly, make sure your course as public speaker is ethically sound. Secondly, avoid name calling or avoid forms of abusive language such as honky, jab. It is because it may use to label a person with sexual orientation, for example. Thirdly, put ethical principle in practice. What you said, you must do it. Fourthly, organizing a speech carefully. Next, choosing topics that are relevant and suitable with the themes that are given to you as a public speaker. Then, you must be honest with what you want to tell to the speaker so that they can get what the point that you want to give to them. And lastly is be fully prepared all over the time, either before you give the speech, in the middle of speech, or the last speech you want to give to the speaker, so that you can give the speech properly. Okay, now I will tell you about guidelines for ethical listening. According to Lucas, there are 3.4 guidelines of ethical listening. Firstly, listen consciously and attentively. As a public speaker, we must be fully prepared with the speech so the listener can maintain to listen consciously and attentively. Secondly, avoid prejudging the speaker. As we have heard, don't judge the book by its cover. So, we cannot judge their appearance, name, race of the speakers. And thirdly, maintain the free and open expression of ideas, which is, as a public speaker, we must avoid name calling or other tactics that can undermine free speech, so the listener can maintain to hear what the speaker talk.
So Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is ATHIRAH binti ROSLI. Okay, I will talk about definition of plagiarism. Definition of plagiarism is presenting another's language or ideas as one's own. For example, a speaker that give a speech in front of a lot of people in the hall or everywhere said that no life but good life is to be chiefly valued, but the quotes is from the Socrates, but he didn't say that this quote credited by Socrates. It's called plagiarism. Is types of plagiarism. First is intentional or unintentional plagiarism. It is occur when the author deliberately, intentional, or knowingly copies entire text, paragraph, or data and present as its own. Okay, secondly is mosaic or page writing. Okay, this happens when a new author uses the previous article text by replacing, reordering, or replacing the words or sentences to give it a new look without acknowledging the original author. Okay, thirdly or lastly is self-plagiarism. Okay, this happens when the author has added research on a previously published article, book, contribute chapter, journal, and present it as a new without acknowledging the first article or taking permission from the previous publisher. Next, I will talk about incremental plagiarism. Incremental plagiarism is failing to give credit for particular parts of a speech that are borrowed from other people. First is quotation, second is paraphrases. Quotation is when you as a speaker give a quote to your audience to make them more energy or something else, and then you quote from Socrates. For example, you quote from Socrates, and then you didn't give a credit that the quotes that you said in your speech from the Socrates is called as quotations and plagiarism. Okay, next is paraphrase. Paraphrases is to restate or summarize an author's ideas in one's own. Okay, this means that when a speaker they paraphrase someone else's words, like tips to success is you must do hard, you must be like that, blah blah blah, and then you as a speaker you repeat that words, you repeat that paraphrase without credit that this is from who, from him or who. This is called as plagiarism in paraphrase.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is SYAFIQAH binti MUSTAPHA. Okay, as for my part, I will presenting about definition, listening and hearing. Second, difference between listening and hearing. And lastly is type of listening. Okay, let's see. First definition, listening and hearing. Okay, listening is paying close attention to and make sense of what we hear, while hearing is vibration of the sound wave on the eardrum and the firing electrochemical impulse in the brain. Okay, let's see the next slide. Okay, now I will explaining about difference between listening and hearing. Okay, let's see first listening. Okay, listening requires great effort, the skill needed to listen effectively. Okay, and based on comparing to speakers understanding, speakers say that listening is effort to the conversation. Okay, secondly, hearing is act of perceiving sounds and receiving sound wave or vibration through ears. And based on interview session with the speaker said that hearing is information in. Okay, let's see to the next slide. Okay, for the last slide, I will explain about type of listening, which is type of listening consists of 4 types, which is first is appreciative listening, second is empathic listening, third is comprehensive listening, and lastly is critical listening. Okay, for the appreciative listening is refer to the listening for pleasure or enjoyment, while second empathic listening is referred to we listen to provide emotional support, and third comprehensive listening is referred to we understand what we listen, what we understand the message that was speaker want to send to us. And lastly is critical listening, refer to we listen to evaluate the message from the speaker. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Strategies to enhance listening. Good listening skills are necessary for understanding lectures, taking meaningful notes, participating in discussions, and communicating well with others. According to Lucas, there are a few ways on how to become a good listener. First, take listening seriously. As we know, being a good listener is as just important as being an effective speaker. Secondly, be an active listener. An active listener, they give their attention to what the speaker said, keep their nonverbal skills, and did not interrupt when the speaker gives speech. Thirdly, resist distraction. Distraction can come in all shapes and sizes. Try not to be judgmental is the first point. You might acquire more information that will broaden the horizon of your opinion after they finish their speech. Let them finish their word so we not make judgment very quick. Next point is don't be divided by appearance or delivery. Then the next point is about focus your listening. Listen for main points and evidence. We should get to use develop note-taking skill. As we know, we can see many of us did not take the note when listen to the speaker tells. Poor listening. According to Lucas, there are 4 causes of poor listening. The first is we not concentrate to speakers, which is detrimental to effective listening. Secondly, listen too hard. Sometimes we listen too hard. We think every word from the speaker equally important. That is about jumping to conclusions. Jumping to conclusion is a psychological term referring to a communication obstacle where one judge or decide something without having all the facts to reach unwarranted conclusions. And the first is focusing on style. The same biases apply to the speaker's physical appearance. To avoid this obstruction, listeners should be aware of these biases and focus on the substance rather than the style of delivery or the speaker's voice and appearance. There are many comparisons between literature review and a speaker about the guidelines of ethical speaking. The literature review conclude that the guidelines is ethically sound, be fully prepared for each speech, be honest what we say, avoid name calling and other form of abusive language, and put ethically principles into practice. However, the speaker say that we must have our own self-will, have a knowledge such as technique and skill, and have guideline like mentor and icon that can burn our spirit to the best speaker. The information of the literature review very detailed and easy to understand, but the speaker also made the new information on that we as a student can get a new knowledge and make us excited to be a good speaker too, as courageous us give a speech in front of people. Before this, we very shy and scared to talk in front of many people, but with the words on new knowledge from our interviewer, is Encik Aiman, made us want to face this without bashful. More, the difference between listening and hearing, the two perspectives between literature review and the speaker about the listening and hearing. Literature review conclude that listening is the act of hearing a sound and understanding what you hear, but hearing is the act of perceiving sound and receiving sound wave or vibration through your ear. The perception of a speaker about hearing is the information in and we hear, but listening is the effort to the conservation. The comparison that we see here, the literature review give a good and detailed knowledge that we as a student very easy to understand. Before this, we see the words of hearing and listening is the same meaning, but when we study public speaking, we know the difference between both of these. Thus, the speaker also made a good conclusion about the hearing and listening that make us better to understand in detail. Therefore, we know that a lot of comparison between literature review and from a speaker, but both make us feel that we must learn and hear more the knowledge about public speaking. Hence, the initiative of our lecturer, Dr. Khairun Nizam bin Muhammad Noor, to interview the prominent speaker was the best experience ever for us that can gain a lot of knowledge. As the conclusion, ethics and listening is an important part of our daily life. It also plays a significant role in any public speaking situation. Overall, ethics and listening are not only the skills needed by the public speaker. In fact, there are a lot of other skills in delivering speech. Besides that, an ethical public speaker considers how to be honest and avoid plagiarism by taking notes during the research, identifying sources, and deciding when it is appropriate to cite sources. In addition, ethical public speakers must cite sources properly by understanding how to paraphrase and directly quote sources. Also, ethical speakers should aim to achieve responsible speech goal by fostering gender, ethnic, and cultural diversity using inclusive language, refraining from hate speech, increasing social consciousness about critical issues where possible, and recognize the balance between free expression with accountability to audience members. After that, listening is an important part of the public speaking situation. Ethical listeners consider their responsibilities when both listening and providing feedback to speakers. Ethical listeners should prepare to listen by removing distractions, avoiding prejudging the speaker, and listen with the whole body by giving supportive non-verbal feedback to the speaker. Lastly, a broader awareness of the importance of effective listening is another weapon in your arsenal as a public speaker. At the same time, building up your own effective listening skills can enhance your academic, professional, and personal success. Being heard is one thing, but speakers need listeners to complete the communication loop.